My name is Minnie, and I am 61 years old. Last Saturday night, I sat at my daughter's dinner table surrounded by strangers who wanted my money. I spent 30 years building a business from nothing. I raised my daughter alone after my husband died. I thought I understood sacrifice. But when Jocelyn looked me in the eyes and said those words, something inside me broke. And the next morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a like and subscribe if you have ever been disrespected by someone you gave everything to. I was born in a small town in rural Texas, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody and hard work was the only currency that mattered. My parents were simple people. My father worked at a local feed store, and my mother cleaned houses for the wealthier families in town. We never had much, but we had each other, and that was enough. When I was 22 years old, I married Henry. He was a young electrician with calloused hands and the kindest smile I had ever seen. We met at a church potluck, and from that moment on, I knew he was the one I wanted to spend my life with. Henry did not come from money either, but he had ambition and a heart full of dreams. We moved to Phoenix, Arizona, looking for better opportunities. The desert felt foreign to a Texas girl like me, but Henry promised we would build something beautiful there. And we did, though it took everything we had. I was 28 years old when I started my business. We were living in a tiny house on the outskirts of the city, and I had just given birth to Jocelyn. Money was tight. Henry worked long hours, and I stayed home with the baby, feeling restless and worried about our future. One afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with an old sewing machine my mother had given me as a wedding gift. I made a simple dress for Jocelyn, and a neighbour stopped by to see the baby. She noticed the dress and asked if I could make one for her daughter. She offered to pay me $20. That was the beginning. I started taking orders from neighbours, then friends of neighbours, then strangers who heard about the woman in the little house who could sew anything. I worked after Jocelyn went to sleep sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning, stitching by lamplight while Henry slept. Within 5 years, I had outgrown our garage. I rented a small storefront and hired my first employee. Within 10 years, I had a real factory with 50 workers. Within 20 years, my company had 3 manufacturing facilities and over 200 employees. We made clothes for department stores across the Southwest. Henry supported me every step of the way. During the day, he worked his electrician jobs. At night, he helped me with the books, tracked inventory, and handled deliveries. He never complained, not once. He believed in me when I did not believe in myself. But life has a way of taking things from you when you least expect it. 8 years ago, Henry was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had never smoked a day in his life, but the disease did not care about fairness. I watched the strongest man I knew wither away over 2 years. I ran my company during the day and sat by his hospital bed at night. I held his hand when he took his last breath. After Henry died, I threw myself into work. It was the only way I knew how to cope. Jocelyn was already in her late 20s by then, building her own career in marketing. She had graduated from a good university, thanks to the money Henry and I had saved over the years. She was ambitious, driven, successful. I was proud of her. 3 years ago, at the age of 58, I sold my company for $4 million. It was enough to secure my future and leave something behind for Jocelyn. I thought I had earned my rest. Now about my relationship with Jocelyn over the years. When she was a little girl, we were inseparable. She used to come to the factory after school and sit in my office doing her homework while I worked. She loved watching the sewing machines, the bolts of fabric, the organized chaos of production. She said she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. As she got older, our relationship changed, as all mother-daughter relationships do. She went to college, made her own friends, developed her own opinions. I supported her choices, even when I did not always agree with them. When she decided to major in business instead of design, I encouraged her. When she moved to the other side of Phoenix for her first job, I helped her furnish her apartment. Then she met Derek. Derek was charming on the surface. He worked in real estate development and always wore expensive suits. He came from a middle-class family, but he had expensive tastes and bigger ambitions. The first time I met him, he spent most of dinner talking about money, how much this property was worth, how much that investment would return, how much he planned to make in the next 5 years. Henry would have seen right through him. But Henry was gone, and I tried to give Derek the benefit of the doubt for Jocelyn's sake. They got married 5 years ago in a ceremony that cost more than my first house. Derek insisted on a country club venue, an imported cake, fresh flowers flown in from South America. I contributed what I could, but I noticed that Derek kept pushing for more. Always more. After the wedding, Jocelyn began to change. Or maybe she had been changing all along, and I had been too busy to notice. She called less often. When we did talk, the conversations felt rushed, superficial. She started making comments about my clothes, suggesting I needed to update my style. She seemed embarrassed when I told stories about the early days of my business, as if my humble beginnings were something to hide. Last month, Jocelyn called me out of the blue. She was unusually cheerful, almost too cheerful. She invited me to dinner at their house on Saturday night. She said it had been too long since we had quality time together. I was thrilled. I thought maybe my daughter was finally ready to reconnect. I spent all week looking forward to it. I made her favorite dessert from childhood, a fresh fruit salad with a honey lime dressing that she used to request every birthday. I bought a new dress. Something modern but tasteful. I wanted her to see that I was trying. I had no idea what I was walking into. I pulled up to Jocelyn and Derek's house at exactly 6:30 on Saturday evening. They lived in one of those gated communities with manicured lawns and identical mailboxes, the kind of neighborhood where everyone drives luxury cars and judges you if you do not. My car was a modest sedan, 5 years old, but well maintained. It looked out of place among the BMWs and Mercedes parked along the street. The house itself was impressive, I had to admit. 2 stories, Spanish tile roof, professionally landscaped front yard, with a fountain in the center. Jocelyn had sent me photos when they bought it 3 years ago, but this was only my 4th time visiting. She always seemed to have excuses when I suggested coming over. I rang the doorbell, holding my fruit salad carefully so it would not spill. Derek answered. He was wearing one of his expensive suits, even though it was a casual Saturday dinner, and his smile did not quite reach his eyes. "Come in. Come in," he said, stepping aside. Jocelyn is in the kitchen finishing up. I thanked him and walked into the foyer. The house smelled like roasted meat and expensive candles. Everything was spotless, like something out of a magazine. I wondered if they had hired someone to clean before I arrived. And then I noticed we were not alone. In the living room, 2 strangers sat on the leather sofa, each holding a glass of wine. A man in his 50s with silver hair and a predatory smile. A young woman, maybe 30, with sharp features and an assessing gaze that made me uncomfortable. Derek introduced them. "This is Warren," he said, gesturing to the older man. "He is a business associate of mine. We have been working on some exciting projects together. And this is Ashley, his assistant." Warren stood and shook my hand with practiced warmth. "So this is the famous Minnie," he said. "Jocelyn has told us all about you. Built a clothing empire from scratch, sold it for quite a sum." Very impressive. I did not like the way he said quite a sum. It felt like he was appraising me, calculating my worth. "Thank you," I said carefully. I was not aware we would have other guests tonight. Derek laughed a little too loudly. "Oh, we thought it would be nice to mix business and pleasure. Warren and I have been talking about an investment opportunity. and we thought you might be interested. Something cold settled in my stomach. This was not a family dinner. This was an ambush. Jocelyn emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She kissed my cheek, quickly, barely making contact. "Mum," she said, "I am so glad you could make it." I held up the fruit salad. "I made your favorite," I said. She took it from me, glanced at it, and set it aside on the counter without really looking. "Thanks," she said. "I will put it in the fridge for later." It never made it to the table. We sat down to dinner in the formal dining room. The table was set with china I did not recognize, probably a wedding gift from Derek's side of the family. Warren sat at one end, Derek at the other. Jocelyn sat next to Derek, and I was placed across from Ashley, who watched me with those calculating eyes. The conversation started innocently enough. Warren asked about my business, about how I got started. I told some of the stories I had told 100 times before. The sewing machine in the kitchen, the first $20 order, the years of late nights and early mornings. But every time I paused, Warren steered the conversation back to money. "How much did you sell the company for, if you do not mind me asking? Where do you keep your investments? Have you thought about what to do with your assets in retirement?" I tried to deflect, to change the subject. But Derek kept circling back, and Jocelyn did nothing to stop him. Finally, Warren got to the point. He leaned forward, his silver hair catching the light from the chandelier. "Minnie," he said, "I am going to be straight with you. Derek and I are developing a luxury condominium project in Scottsdale. Prime location, high-end finishes, projected returns of 300% within 2 years. We are looking for investors who want to get in on the ground floor." I set down my fork. "How much are you looking for?" "Well," Warren said, "for someone with your resources, we would recommend a minimum investment of $500,000. But of course, the more you put in, the more you stand to gain. $500,000. Nearly 15% of my entire net worth." "I need more information," I said. "What is the exact location? Do you have the permits in place? Who are the other investors? Can I see the financial projections?" Warren's smile flickered. "Those details are somewhat sensitive at this stage," he said. "We are still in the early phases. But I can assure you this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "I have been in business for over 30 years," I said. "I know that once-in-a-lifetime opportunities are usually neither." Derek's face darkened. He leaned toward me. "Minnie, we are not trying to take advantage of you. We are offering you a chance to grow your wealth. You should be thanking us. I should be thanking you for asking me to invest $500,000 in a project I know nothing about." Ashley spoke for the first time. "Mrs. Minnie." She said, her voice smooth and condescending. "I understand that business has changed a lot since your day. Things move faster now. If you wait too long to make decisions, you miss out. That is just how it works in the modern market." I felt my jaw tighten. "In my day," I said, "we called that kind of fast decision-making getting swindled." Jocelyn sighed loudly. She had been silent through most of this exchange, staring at her plate. Now she looked up at me with an expression I did not recognize. Something between frustration and embarrassment. "Mum," she said, "can we talk privately for a moment?" I nodded and stood. We walked into the kitchen, leaving the others at the table. I could feel their eyes on my back. Jocelyn turned to face me, her arms crossed. "Why are you being so difficult?" "Difficult. I am asking basic questions about a major investment. That is not difficult. That is responsible. You are embarrassing me in front of Derek's partners. I am embarrassing you by not blindly handing over my money." She shook her head. "You do not understand how business works anymore. Things are different now. You have to take risks. I have taken more risks than you know, I said quietly. I built a company from nothing. I employed over 200 people. Do not tell me I do not understand business. Jocelyn rolled her eyes, and I had seen her do that before many times over the years. But this time was different. This time there was contempt behind it. We should get back, she said. Just think about what Warren said. This could be really good for all of us. All of us, I thought. Not me. All of us. Meaning her and Derek. We returned to the table. Warren was talking to Ashley in low tones. Derek was refilling his wine glass. Nobody looked at me. I sat down and picked up my fork again, but I had lost my appetite. The rest of the main course passed in strained silence. Warren and Derek exchanged glances occasionally, and Ashley typed something on her phone under the table. Jocelyn pushed food around her plate without eating. I could feel the tension building like pressure before a storm. When the plates were cleared, Derek brought out dessert, some kind of expensive chocolate mousse from a bakery downtown. My fruit salad remained in the refrigerator, forgotten. Warren tried one more time. Minnie, he said, leaning back in his chair with a glass of port. I want you to understand the magnitude of this opportunity. We have other investors lined up, people with serious capital. But Derek wanted to give you first consideration. Out of family loyalty. Family loyalty. The words tasted bitter. I appreciate the thought, I said slowly. But I need to consult with my lawyer and my financial advisor before making any decisions of this size. That is how I have always done business, and I am not going to change now. Derek slammed his palm on the table, making the glasses rattle. This is exactly the problem, he said. You are stuck in the past. You do not trust anyone. You think everyone is out to get you. I stayed calm, though my heart was pounding. I think I have earned the right to be cautious with my money. I worked for over 3 decades to build what I have. And what good is it doing just sitting there, Derek demanded. Money should work for you. That is basic economics. I have my own investments, I said. I am comfortable with my financial situation. Comfortable. Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. Comfortable is another word for stagnant, for outdated, for old. The word hung in the air. I looked at my daughter. Jocelyn was staring at the table, her face flushed. She would not meet my eyes. Jocelyn, I said quietly, do you have anything to add? For a long moment she did not respond. Warren shifted in his seat. Ashley watched with undisguised curiosity, like she was watching a drama unfold on television. Finally, Jocelyn looked up. And what she said next will stay with me for the rest of my life. Mum, she said, her voice flat and tired. You are too old to understand. This is how business works now. You are stuck in the past, and you are holding yourself back. You are holding all of us back. The room went silent. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break exactly. Crack. Like ice on a pond in early spring, fractures spreading outward in every direction. I looked at my daughter, this woman I had raised from infancy. I had changed her diapers. I had walked the floor with her when she had colic. I had sat up all night when she had the flu. I had worked double shifts to pay for her braces, her dance lessons, her college tuition. I had held her hand at her father's funeral when she sobbed so hard she could not breathe. And now she was telling me I was too old to understand. In front of strangers, in front of people who wanted my money. She was taking their side. I pushed back my chair and stood. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, a harsh sound that cut through the silence. Mum, Jocelyn said finally, showing a flicker of alarm. Where are you going? I did not answer. I picked up my purse from the sideboard where I had left it. I walked toward the front door without looking back. Derek called after me. Minnie, come on. Do not be dramatic. I kept walking. Jocelyn followed me to the door. Mum, wait. We can talk about this. I turned to face her one last time. My daughter, my only child, the person I had sacrificed everything for. There is nothing to talk about, I said, and my voice did not shake even though everything inside me was trembling. You made yourself very clear. I walked out into the night. The air was cool, a relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw Jocelyn standing in the doorway watching me go. She did not come after me. She did not call out. She just stood there, arms crossed, as my taillights disappeared around the corner. I drove home in silence. No radio, no phone calls, just me and the road, and the weight of what had happened pressing down on my chest. I did not cry at first. I was too shocked for tears. But by the time I pulled into my driveway, they were streaming down my face. I went inside and locked the door behind me. The house was dark and empty, the way it had been since Henry died. I turned on a single lamp in the living room and sat on the couch, still wearing my coat, still clutching my purse. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. 11, midnight, 1 in the morning. I did not move. I kept replaying the scene in my head. The way Warren had looked at me like I was a mark. The way Ashley had smirked when I asked questions. The way Derek had dismissed me as outdated. And worst of all, the way Jocelyn had sided with them. The way she had reduced everything I was, everything I had done, to a single dismissive sentence. You are too old to understand. I had given that girl my whole life. I had built a business so she would never want for anything. I had stayed strong through Henry's illness, so she would not see her mother fall apart. I had been both parents after he died, working myself to exhaustion so she could have every opportunity. And this was my reward. Being told I was too old to understand by my own daughter in front of people who saw me as nothing more than a wallet. By 4 in the morning, the tears had stopped. Something had shifted inside me. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but beneath it was something else. Something hard and clear and certain. I got up from the couch and walked to the kitchen. I made a pot of coffee and sat at the table as the sky outside began to lighten. I watched the sun rise over the mountains, painting the desert in shades of pink and gold. And by the time the light filled the room, I knew exactly what I needed to do. At 8 in the morning, I called my brother Curtis in Texas. He answered on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep. Minnie. What is wrong? I told him everything. The dinner. The investment scheme. The strangers at the table. Derek's hostility. Jocelyn's words. By the time I finished, I was crying again, but my voice was steady. Curtis was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that I needed to hear. Minnie, he said, you do not deserve this. You have spent your whole life giving to everyone else. It is time you started protecting yourself. I know, I said. That is why I called. Do you remember what Mama used to say about inheritance? Curtis exhaled slowly. She said that money should go to people who value you, not just people who share your blood. Our mother had been a wise woman. She had left her small savings to a niece who cared for her in her final years, rather than to a son who had abandoned the family decades earlier. At the time, some relatives had criticized her choice, but Mama had been right. Money should mean something. Curtis asked me what I was planning to do. I told him. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, I support you whatever you decide. And Minnie for what it is worth. Gloria talks about you all the time. She says you are her inspiration. Gloria was Curtis's daughter, my niece. She was 28 years old and in her final year of medical school studying to become a pediatrician. She called me every few months just to talk sent cards on my birthday and visited whenever she could afford the plane ticket. She reminded me of myself at that age, full of dreams and willing to work for them. After I hung up with Curtis, I called Margaret. She was the lawyer who had helped me sell my company 3 years ago. Sharp, professional, trustworthy. She had her own firm downtown, and she owed me nothing, but she had always treated me with respect. Margaret picked up on the third ring. "Minnie," she said, "good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "I need to change my will," I said. "Today, if possible." There was a pause. Then Margaret said, "Come to my office at 11. I will clear my schedule." I arrived at Margaret's office at 10:45. The building was a glass tower in the financial district, the kind of place where serious decisions were made. I took the elevator to the 15th floor and walked into the reception area. Margaret met me personally. She was in her early 50s, with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Tell me what happened," she said. So I told her. All of it. Margaret listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. "I am sorry," she said. "That sounds incredibly painful." "It is," I admitted. "But I did not come here for sympathy. I came here to take action." Margaret nodded. "Walk me through what you are thinking." I explained my plan. Currently, my will left everything to Jocelyn. The house, the investments, the savings. All of it. Around $3.8 million in total assets after the company sale. I wanted to change that. Margaret pulled up my existing will on her computer, and we went through it line by line. By the end of our meeting, we had drafted a new document. Under the new will, Jocelyn would receive $10,000, enough that she could not claim she had been accidentally forgotten, or that I lacked mental capacity. Just enough to make the statement clear. I chose to leave you this amount because I chose it, not because I forgot you. The rest of my estate would be divided into 3 parts. 1/3 would go to my brother Curtis. He had always been there for me, even when we lived 1,000 miles apart. He had visited every month during Henry's illness, taking time off work to help however he could. He deserved to be recognized. 1/3 would go to Gloria, my niece. She was working so hard to become a doctor, accumulating loans, sacrificing her 20s to help others. I wanted to give her the freedom to practice medicine without the crushing weight of debt. The final third would go to establish the Henry Sullivan Memorial Scholarship Fund. It would provide college scholarships to students from low-income families, especially children of single parents. Henry would have loved that. He had always believed that education was the key to a better life. Margaret typed everything up while I waited. By 2 o'clock, the new will was ready. I read through it carefully, then signed my name on the designated line. Margaret signed as witness, along with her paralegal. It was done. But I was not finished yet. Over the next few hours, I made several more calls. I contacted my bank and changed the beneficiary on my accounts. Jocelyn was removed. Curtis was added. I called my insurance company and updated the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. Again, Jocelyn was removed. 3 years ago, I had set up a joint savings account to help Jocelyn with emergencies. I had deposited money into it regularly, building up a balance of about $45,000. She had access to it, though she had never used it. As far as I knew, she did not even check the balance. I closed that account. I transferred the money to the scholarship fund. Finally, I sat down at my kitchen table with a glass of water and my phone. There was a long list of missed calls and text messages from Jocelyn. I scrolled through them without reading them all. The first ones were annoyed. Mum, where did you go? You left in the middle of dinner. That was rude. Then confused. Mum, call me back. I do not understand why you are upset. Then defensive. Whatever you think happened tonight, you are overreacting. Derek and Warren were just trying to help. Then angry. Fine, ignore me. I am done trying to explain myself. Then much later, almost plaintive. Mum, are you okay? Please just let me know you got home safe. I typed out a single response, an email, not a text, short and to the point. Dear Jocelyn, the trip to Colorado has been on my mind, but there is something else I need to address. I have made some changes to my will and my financial accounts. I will not discuss the details with you at this time. I am safe and healthy. I hope you had a nice evening. Your mother, Minnie. I hit send and put down the phone. Then I sat there in my quiet kitchen, watching the afternoon light shift across the walls. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel vindicated. I felt tired and sad and strangely peaceful. I had done what I needed to do. The rest was out of my hands. The response came faster than I expected. Within 2 hours of sending my email, my phone began ringing again. Jocelyn, then Derek, then Jocelyn again. I let every call go to voicemail. The text messages piled up. First from Jocelyn demanding to know what I meant about changes to my will. Then from Derek, his tone shifting from confusion to outrage. What are you trying to pull? This is completely unacceptable. We need to talk immediately. I turned off my phone and went to bed early. For the first time in days, I slept soundly. The next morning I woke to find 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. I read them over coffee, noting how the tone evolved. Jocelyn's messages started with disbelief. Mum, I do not understand. What changes? Why would you do this without telling me? Then came the accusations. This is because of last night, is it not? You are punishing me over one comment. That is so unfair. Then the justifications. I was trying to help you, Mum. Derek and Warren have a really good opportunity. You just refused to listen. Then the guilt trips. I am your daughter, your only child. How could you cut me out like this? Do you even love me anymore? I noticed something interesting. In all those messages, not once did Jocelyn apologize for what she had said. Not once did she acknowledge that her words might have hurt me. It was all about her. Her feelings, her inheritance, her sense of being wronged. I did not respond. 2 days later, Derek called me. Not from his cell phone, but from a number I did not recognize. I answered without thinking. Minnie. He said, his voice tight and controlled. We need to talk. I do not believe we do. This is ridiculous. You cannot just cut Jocelyn out of your will over one dinner conversation. I can do whatever I want with my own estate, I said calmly. That is the law. She is your daughter. Yes. And she told me I was too old to understand. In front of your business partners. While you were trying to pressure me into a questionable investment. Derek sputtered. That is not what happened. You are twisting everything. I was there, Derek. I know exactly what happened. He changed tactics. Look, he said, his voice turning softer. I know things got heated. Maybe some things were said that should not have been. Can we just start over? I will apologize. Jocelyn will apologize. We can put this behind us. I considered his words carefully. Then I said, when Jocelyn is ready to apologize, she knows how to reach me. But I will not be changing my will based on promises. Trust is earned through actions, not words. Derek's composure cracked. You are making a huge mistake. Do you know how this is going to look? Everyone will think you have lost your mind. An old woman changing her will out of spite. Let them think what they want, I said. I have never cared much about what other people think. That is how I built my business. I hung up. Over the next week, the pressure continued from various angles. Jocelyn sent long emails explaining her perspective, all of which carefully avoided any actual apology. Derek left voicemails alternating between conciliatory and threatening. Even Warren reached out once expressing disappointment that we could not come to an arrangement. I ignored them all. But the worst was yet to come. About 10 days after the dinner, my friend Nora called me. We had known each other for 20 years since our businesses had been in the same industrial park. Nora had retired around the same time I did, and we usually had lunch together once a week. "Minnie," she said, her voice hesitant. "I need to tell you something. I ran into Diane from my old book club yesterday, and she told me something disturbing." "What is it?" "Apparently Jocelyn has been telling people that you are having memory problems, that you have been confused lately and making irrational decisions. She is suggesting that you might need to be evaluated for dementia." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter was telling people I was losing my mind. She was laying the groundwork to challenge my mental competency. "Are you sure?" I asked. Diane heard it directly from someone who works with Jocelyn. "I am so sorry, Minnie. I thought you should know." After I hung up with Nora, I sat very still for a long time. The hurt was immense. But more than hurt, I felt angry, righteously, justifiably angry. My daughter was not just disappointed about the will. She was actively trying to undermine me, to paint me as senile, to take away my credibility so that she could contest my decisions. I called Margaret immediately. She listened to what I had learned and then spoke in her calm, professional voice. "This is not uncommon, unfortunately. When people do not like the contents of a will, they sometimes try to have it overturned by claiming the person lacked capacity. But do not worry, your will is rock solid. You signed it in my presence, demonstrated clear reasoning, and I documented our entire conversation. If anyone tries to challenge your competency, they will not get far." I thanked her and asked her to keep records of everything just in case. Then I did something I had been avoiding. I wrote a letter to Jocelyn. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten letter on my personal stationery, the kind I used to use for thank you notes and important correspondence. I wrote about my love for her, about the years of sacrifice and devotion, about how proud I had been watching her grow up. And I wrote about my disappointment. Not anger, not bitterness, just profound sadness that we had come to this point. I told her that I knew what she was saying about me to others. I told her that I was not senile, not confused, not irrational. I was hurt. There was a difference. I told her that my door was always open if she wanted to rebuild our relationship. But it had to be based on mutual respect, not on inheritance expectations. She could not treat me as a resource to be exploited and then claim to love me. I sealed the letter and mailed it the next day. 3 weeks passed. Then a month. Jocelyn did not respond to my letter. The calls and texts stopped. Silence settled between us like snow. I focused on myself. I joined a book club at the local library. I reconnected with old friends. I started writing my memoir, something I had been meaning to do for years. I took long walks in the desert preserve near my house, watching the cacti bloom in the spring warmth. I was sad, yes, but I was also free. 2 months after that disastrous dinner, Jocelyn showed up at my door. I was in the kitchen making lunch when the doorbell rang. I opened it without checking the peephole, expecting a package delivery. There stood my daughter. She looked different, thinner, tired. Her makeup was minimal, and her designer clothes had been replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. She was holding a paper bag from the bakery down the street, the one that made the almond croissants I had always loved. "Mum," she said, "can I come in?" I stepped aside without speaking. She walked into the living room and looked around as if seeing it for the first time. Nothing had changed since her last visit months ago. The same furniture, the same photographs, the same quiet order. "I brought croissants," she said, holding up the bag. "I remembered you like them." "Thank you," I said. "Would you like coffee?" She nodded. We went through the familiar motions, me brewing the coffee, her sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where I had sat the morning after the dinner, deciding to change my will. When we both had cups in front of us, Jocelyn spoke. "I read your letter," she said. "I have read it probably 50 times." I waited. At first I was angry, really angry. I thought you were being dramatic, trying to guilt me. I showed it to Derek and he said we should talk to a lawyer about contesting the will. I nodded slowly. I had expected as much. But then something happened. She paused, staring into her coffee cup. Derek and Warren's project fell apart. The permits were denied. Turns out there were some issues with the land that Warren had not disclosed. Derek lost a lot of money. His own money. I am sorry to hear that I said, and I meant it. Losing money is always painful. Jocelyn looked up at me. That is when I started thinking about what you said at dinner. About asking questions. About being careful. You were right. If I had asked the same questions, I would have seen the red flags. But I did not ask. I just trusted Derek. Sometimes we learn lessons the hard way, I said. She nodded. And then I started thinking about everything else, about what I said to you, about calling you too old to understand. Mum, I am so sorry. I felt something shift in my chest. Not a crack this time. Something softer, a loosening. Tell me why you said it. I said, not to excuse it, just so I can understand. Jocelyn was quiet for a moment. Then the words came halting at first, then faster. She told me about the pressure she felt to fit into Derek's world. His colleagues, his clients, his aspirations. Everyone in their circle came from wealth, had advanced degrees, talked about investments and portfolios like they were discussing the weather. She felt like she had to prove herself constantly. She told me that she was ashamed of where she came from. Not ashamed of me exactly, but ashamed of our modest beginnings. Ashamed that her mother had started a business in a garage. Ashamed that her father had been an electrician. She wanted to reinvent herself as someone who had always been successful, always been affluent. And when I asked all those questions at dinner, she said it reminded everyone that I did not come from money, that my mother was this practical, suspicious, blue-collar person. I hated that. I hated that they could see where I really came from. Her honesty was brutal. And necessary. So you were ashamed of me, I said. Yes. She was crying now. And I am so sorry. You gave me everything. You worked so hard. And I repaid you by being embarrassed by your success. That is messed up, Mum. I know that now. How do you know it now? She wiped her eyes. After the project collapsed, Derek and I started fighting. About money, about priorities, about everything. One night he said something about how he had expected me to have access to your wealth by now. That is the word he used. Access. Like you were an ATM. I felt my jaw tighten but did not speak. And I realized that I had been thinking the same way. Not consciously, maybe. But somewhere in my mind, I had been counting your money as part of my future. Our future. Like I deserved it just for being your daughter. What changed? I started seeing a therapist. Jocelyn laughed weakly. I know, right? Me in therapy. But it has been helping. She is making me look at patterns in my life, how I have always defined myself by what I had, not who I am, how I have pushed away the people who genuinely love me and clung to people who just want something from me. This was more self-awareness than I had ever heard from my daughter. It gave me hope, even as the pain of the past months lingered. "Jocelyn," I said, "I appreciate you telling me all this. I really do. But, but trust takes time to rebuild. I have been hurt very deeply, not just by what you said, but by what you did afterward. Telling people I was senile, trying to undermine my competency." She flinched. "Derek pushed for that. He said it was our best strategy. But that is not an excuse. I went along with it. I should not have." "No, you should not have." Silence stretched between us. Jocelyn stared at her hands. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She was 35 years old, young enough to change, old enough to understand consequences. "I am not going to change my will right now," I said finally. "Maybe someday if things are genuinely different between us. But I need to see consistent change over time, not just words, actions." She nodded. "I understand. And Derek is not welcome in my home until he apologizes directly to me. Not through you, not through a lawyer, to my face. I will tell him. I have one more condition. Anything. I want you to come to dinner here once a month. Just you and me. No Derek, no business talk, no agenda, just mother and daughter. Can you do that?" Jocelyn's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Yes. Yes, I can do that." We finished our coffee. I walked her to the door. Before she left, she hugged me, and this time it was not brief or perfunctory. It was the hug of a child seeking forgiveness, and I let it last. "I will see you next month," she said. "I will be here." I watched her drive away. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I stood in my doorway for a long time, breathing in the desert air, feeling something that might have been the beginning of peace. The months that followed were not easy, but they were better. Jocelyn kept her promise. She came to dinner every month, always alone. At first, our conversations were careful, like we were learning to speak a new language. We talked about safe topics. Her work, though, she was more honest now about the challenges, my writing project, and the memories it was bringing back. Books we were reading, movies we had seen. Gradually, we went deeper. She told me about her therapy sessions, the insights she was gaining about herself. I told her about the grief I still carried for her father, the loneliness of the years since his death. We cried together sometimes, laughed together too. I flew to Texas to visit Curtis and Gloria. Curtis looked older than I remembered, his hair almost entirely grey now, but his hug was the same, strong and warm. Gloria was radiant just a few months from finishing her residency. She talked about her plans to work in a community health clinic, serving families who could not afford expensive care. "Aunt Minnie," she said over dinner, "I do not know how to thank you. The scholarship fund, the inheritance. You have changed my life." I squeezed her hand. "Just help people," I said. "That is all the thanks I need." I also started the scholarship application process for the Henry Sullivan Memorial Fund. Working with the local community college, we identified 3 students for the first round of awards. One was a young woman who reminded me of myself at that age. She was raising 2 children alone, while working nights and taking classes during the day. Her dream was to become a nurse. When I handed her the scholarship check, she cried. I cried too. I made new friends through the book club and started volunteering at the library on Tuesday afternoons. I went on a trip to the Grand Canyon with Nora and 2 other women from our retirement community. We hiked a little, ate too much, and stayed up late talking about our lives. I was happy. Not deliriously happy, not pretending that everything was perfect, but genuinely, quietly content. As for Derek, he never did apologize. Jocelyn told me they were separating. The failed investment had exposed cracks in their marriage that had been there all along. She was not divorcing him yet, she said, but she had moved into her own apartment. She was learning to be alone for the first time in years. I did not tell her what to do about her marriage. That was her decision to make. But I noticed that without Derek's influence, my daughter was becoming more like the person I remembered. Kinder, more thoughtful, more present. One evening, almost a year after the dinner that had started everything, Jocelyn and I were sitting on my back patio, watching the stars come out. The desert sky was clear and dark, scattered with more stars than you could ever see in the city. "Mum," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you regret changing your will?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I said. "I do not regret it. It was the right thing to do at the time, and now. Now I do not know what the future holds. Maybe someday things will be different. But I have learned that love and inheritance are not the same thing. I can love you completely and still choose to direct my assets where they will do the most good. Those two things are not contradictory." Jocelyn was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I think I finally understand that. It took me a long time, but I get it now." I reached over and took her hand. "That is all I ever wanted," I said, "for you to understand." We sat there together, mother and daughter, under the vast Arizona sky. The past could not be erased. The hurt would always be part of our story, but so would this moment, this quiet reconciliation, this hard-won peace. I thought about Henry then, about what he would say if he could see us now. I think he would be proud. Proud of me for standing up for myself. Proud of Jocelyn for finding her way back. Proud of both of us for doing the difficult work of healing. "Miss you," I whispered to the stars. Somewhere in the night I could almost hear him whisper back. So that is my story. It is not a fairy tale. There was no magical resolution, no moment where everything suddenly became perfect. Real life does not work that way. Real life is messy and complicated, full of hurt and forgiveness and tentative new beginnings. But here is what I learned. You are never too old to understand your own worth. You are never too old to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away from people who treat you as less than you deserve. Age does not diminish your value. It increases it. Every year of experience, every lesson learned, every hardship survived adds to who you are. My daughter called me too old to understand, but I understood something she did not. I understood that love without respect is not love at all. I understood that family loyalty does not mean accepting abuse. I understood that the best inheritance we can give our children is not money. It is the example of a life lived with dignity and self-respect. If you are watching this and you have ever been dismissed because of your age, I want you to know that you matter. Your opinions matter. Your boundaries matter. Do not let anyone, not even your own children, make you feel like you are worth less because you have lived longer. And if you are a daughter or son watching this, please remember that your parents are people too. They have feeling and dignity and the right to be treated with kindness. The money they have saved over a lifetime belongs to them. It is not your birthright. Love them for who they are, not for what they might leave you. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been made to feel too old to understand by someone you love? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know our community here supports each other. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. It helps more than you know. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel and hit the notification bell so you do not miss the next story, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Maybe a friend going through something similar. Maybe a parent who feels unseen. Maybe a daughter who needs a gentle reminder to call her mother. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. I wish you wisdom in your decisions, strength in your boundaries, and peace in your heart. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember you are never too old to understand your own worth.